I was surrounded by a lot of gang violence from as far back as I could remember. The first murder I ever seen, I was literally like 4 years old when a man got killed right in front of my house. First of all, man, thank you for having me on your podcast, Daniel. Man, I think you're doing a great work with Men of Purpose. I believe you're going to touch thousands, man, thousands of men that need that inspiration, that encouragement, and that even that spiritual guidance. It's so vital for men. Especially them men that have come from some deep trenches of devastation. For me, growing up in LA County Jail, specifically the city of La Puente, um, I was surrounded by a lot of gang violence from as far back as I could remember. And, you know, it didn't take long for it to become a part of the norm of my everyday way of living. And it conditioned me real young in age, because, I go back and I always share it in my story how the first murder I ever seen, I was literally like 4 years old when a man got killed right in front of my house. And it would be just a few years later that I would see multiple people get killed right within the playground of my neighborhood. And what's crazy about my story is that I come from a good family. I come from a middle class working family. My mother, my father, they all worked. My story isn't that one where we were just poor and we were just struggling and we had to do whatever we can to survive. That ain't the story for me. My mother and father were both hard workers. We always had food in our refrigerator. Our lights stood on, heat stood on. Um, but yet, um, my story is surrounded by a lot of other hardships, and a lot of them hardships are mainly just because of the community that I lived in, being surrounded by a lot of violence, around a lot of perversion. I was real young when I was exposed to you know um sexual sins, as far as you know I I don't know the proper terminology, but I would say like sexual assaults, because they were literally like trains. They were literally, forced sex. Not so much rape, but it was just multiple guys sleeping with the same girl, in the neighborhood. And I seen a lot of this stuff, man. And as a little boy, it's not something we're supposed to see. It's a holy thing. But for us kids, we used to see like the older homies doing things like that, and it wasn't long till we found ourselves looking at pornography, looking at rated X videos and stuff, and just perverting our minds at a real young age. Um, Looking at that, looking at murders taking place in our streets, looking at a lot of drug addiction. Um, I grew up literally thinking that this is just the way life is. I thought that's the way the world was. When I used to watch some of the TV shows and, good families and, eating at the dinner table with one another, I used to think like, wow, is it like, I didn't know much about Hollywood, but I knew that TV wasn't realistic, in my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned this from a young age that TV right there is for entertainment purposes only. Regardless of what was on it, I thought that TV was just there to entertain us. I didn't think any of that stuff was factual. Nothing.
Were your families so in your upbringing was God part of your family or no?
I'm gonna say yes and no. I mean, we had a big old picture of the Virgin Mary in my house. We had a couple crucifixes in my house. But the only time we really went to church was for funerals, weddings, baptisms. Um, that was it. We never really went like really wanting to get closer to God. We didn't go to church to try to figure out what his will was. We didn't go to church. Um, Really, I mean, for me, as far back as I can remember, I don't remember us going there and really asking God for anything. I thought we were just there listening to man speak. Most of the time, I would be falling asleep in there. I never really got nothing from it. You know,
Was it Catholic church or Christian?
it was a Catholic church.
Catholic.
Yeah, during my youth, I went to one Christian service in my life. It was Calvary Chapel. Raul Reese was the pastor. and I don't know if it was Ballin Park or West Covina, but it was somewhere down that line. And I remember going there because my 4-year-old nephew he had just passed away. And when that happened, something just triggered a whole different evil in my life. And what happened is that I went on a whole rampage. And my sister's mother-in-law was a member of that Christian church, Calvary Chapel. And she took me. She said, I want you to go to church with me. And I was like, I'm good. I don't want to go to church. But I ended up going with her though. And it kind of freaked me out because I wasn't used to the loud clapping and dancing and worshiping. And especially at the end when they did the altar call, the salvation, I was like, what the heck is going on here? This is crazy. But I didn't really get nothing on it. I didn't go up to the altar or nothing. I was just watching. I don't remember what the sermon was about, but that I did attend a Christian church at just that one time.
Did you, as a kid, did you believe in God? Because I know for myself, man, like, I always knew God was real, right? There was always a sense that there was something more than what was going on around me. Like, I knew there was more to life than just bills, watching my parents argue over money. Like, I always had this deep inner desire knowing that God was real. And I'd only cry out to him when I got in trouble, right? Even as a young kid, I can remember I'd get in trouble at school. Oh God, please help me. Don't let my mom whoop me. Like little stupid prayers like that, right? And I would pray and ask God, even though I wasn't a believer, I wasn't going to church. No one was setting that example for me. So did you always believe that God was real?
I really can't tell you that I did. Even when I was going to the Catholic Church, I even went to catechism, and I don't remember like any conviction or anything. You know what? Let me correct myself when I say that though, because I remember I had this belief. Now that you bring it up, I had this belief that, and I don't know if I learned this in the Catholic Church from one of the nuns or whatever, but I remember like wearing a rosary or wearing one of them tags for Holy Communion. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I remember wearing one of these things, and I remember somebody told me that if I was to die wearing this, that I would be okay with God. Like I would go to heaven if I wore this tag.
That's crazy.
And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but like when you make your Holy Communion, they give you this double-sided, there's like a tag here and a tag on the back.
I know what you're talking about.
There's like a saint. Yeah, there's like a saint on the front and I think the Virgin Mary on the back or whatever. And I was gangbanging with this thing, man. I was running the streets gangbanging with this, selling dope with this, everything.
Thinking that you were good, huh?
Thinking that I was covered, as long as I have this, if I die in the streets, and I say this because, and I really kind of had this sense of kind of little confidence, that, man, because I had homies that were dying real young, my age, 15, 16 years old. We were dying out there in the streets. So, I mean, that was a reality of mine. If I die, and I kind of felt like I had this golden ticket, like if I die, I got this, you know what I mean? But at the same time, as we talk about God, it's crazy though, because I want to say I believed in the devil before I really believed in God.
Yeah.
Because I had some crazy heavy metal homies that were all into that crazy satanic stuff, man.
Ouija boards and all that stuff.
Ouija boards, yeah. Like, I mean, hey, this crazy homie of mine's, they got this Ouija board, man, and they literally cut off a cat's head and put it on the Ouija board, expecting this cat to talk.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I didn't see all that happening. I mean, even just killing the cat, I was kind of like, that's kind of sick, but I'm interested in seeing it, I want to see if this cat does, what I mean? I wasn't so much concerned about the dead cat. I was concerned about, like, I want to see if this really works, you know what I mean? And they were into, like, playing the AC/DC music backwards on the record players and doing chants and reading the cards. And I would be surrounded with all this, man. And that's how come I say, I remember, like, even when I would go to juvenile hall when I was young, I would, like, remember reading the cards, like regular playing deck, like asking the deck questions, you know what I mean? And I would find myself in my cell literally asking these cards questions.
Let me ask you this. So seeing somebody die at the age of 4, you said you saw someone get murdered in your front yard. How did that impact you further on in your life?
You know what? It devalued humans.
human life, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, like, see, I grew up in a home of addiction and chaos and dysfunction, and that was normal to me. So when people tell me there's circumstances, like I didn't see, you saw the stuff on TV and that you knew that wasn't real because you were living a different life and you were seeing other things around you. And it's crazy when you come out of those situations now that you're walking with Christ and you see the true dysfunction. It's like God shines the light in the dark areas of your life. What was normal to you once, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, being in and out of prison, running the streets, getting like that life was chaos. I look back now, bro, and I'm like, this was a life of chaos. What was normal to me? Like how deceived the devil had me, right?
Yeah.
And when I look at people and they're doing certain things and they're still stuck on that path, that's all it is, man. Satan is a deceiver, right? He deceives people into believing that what they're doing is normal. It's okay. It's fine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure seeing
Yeah.
somebody, die at a young age like that had to,
Yeah. It wasn't until recently, Daniel, it was probably maybe about 3-4 years ago. And I've been saved for almost 30 years, but it's taken, almost 30 years, almost, I would say probably like 25 years before I went to a funeral and actually cried for the person.
yeah.
And I used to like, since I've been home since 2003, and I've been to multiple funerals and stuff of people that I loved, that I was close to, but I wouldn't cry for whatever reason. And I used to question myself, like, man, why ain't I crying? Like, I feel bad for them, but I couldn't cry. And I was like, man, my heart, like, I believe the Lord Jesus Christ changed my heart and set me free. But man, for whatever reason, like, it was something that I was really messed up, because I had been to so many funerals and it's kind of like, I think in my head, Daniel, I become numb where it's like, this is just a part of life. Like death is a part of the cycle of life. Like we all got to die at some point, regardless how they died, you know what I mean? But it was probably like about, I want to say maybe 5 years ago that this young girl that she was in my Bible study. Actually I was teaching when she was 12 years old. I was teaching at the church and she was in my class, and years later, after a life of addiction and everything, she got murdered, and then it really hurt me, and I cried for her. And after that, I went to another funeral and I cried again. I was like, man, is like, why did it take so long for the Lord to soften my heart in this area? You know what I mean? Because I didn't like not being able to cry. I kind of felt like, what's wrong with me? You know what I'm saying?
I experienced that in my own life as well, getting out of prison. And I was emotionless for a while, bro, because I had learned to suppress my emotions. When you're sitting in that box, like you don't show certain emotions, you don't do certain things. So I had learned to suppress my emotions for so long, and I believe my heart got calloused, right? The Bible calls it a heart of stone. And God takes that little by little through the transformation. And it's like you said, 30 years. There was things I hold on to 20 years, 16 years, like these things that were hidden deep in my heart, man, that took time for God to really remove them from my life. And I had a pastor on here maybe 3 weeks ago, and he was talking about emotional soul ties. Like, he's like, yeah, man, there'll be something that happens that jerks that soul tie, and it'll get a rise out of you. And it's because there's something still there. You know what I mean? He's like, you haven't closed that door yet. You haven't dealt with it. And that's something that really resonated with me, because there's a lot of things in my life, man, as a grown man, that I'm thinking I'm a man. Like, I'm a man. I got kids. I got a wife. But ideally, I'm not a man, because I still have little boy problems, things I didn't deal with as a kid, things I didn't deal with as a child. And if you don't deal with them, what happens? They get passed on, right? It's a generational curse. It continues. So
Correct.
it's amazing to see that 15, 20 years into your faith, you're still dealing with certain things, and God delivers you from those things, right? Because some people never heal from them, bro. And it's sad to see people, even if they are Christians, they're sour Christians, you know what I mean? Like, they're not, you can tell there's something still going on in their hearts, and they're not dealing with it,
Yeah. And like you said, for me, I got saved in prison, while in county jail. Then I went to the youth authority, prison, all that. And like you said, there's that suppression of our feelings, our emotions. And it's not something that we just normally talk about on the yard with homies. You know what I mean? We don't be like, yeah, man, today I'm really missing my mom. She died, while I've been in here, and I never really got to grieve her. And, you don't talk like that. You don't talk about like, man, I'm really missing my wife and my kids today. Because we already know you say that in that type of population, they're going to clown you. They're going like,
Yeah.
man, look at this fool, man. He all hard timing in. Look at all sad and stuff, man. Like, man, let her do what she's doing, man.
Yeah.
You know, you got the homies out there taking care of her. Don't trip, you know? It is like, you don't talk about
No.
that. You don't talk about certain things, you know, especially how you feeling or
No.
any of that stuff, you know what I mean? Unless you're feeling angry, you can be like, man, you know, like, that's one of the emotions that we can boast about, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, I get it though, man. You know, and for me, you know, I got busted when I was real young. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, like I'm a grown man and I still got kid issues. You know, I literally at 16 years old was tried as an adult, and I was forced into the system around adults and had to grow up with adults and end up going, you know, through everything I went through in prison. And you know, almost 14 years later, I come home and I got a teenager that I got to deal with now. So I mean, he's 14, my son. I'm 16 when I leave. It's like I'm still like 16 mentality. So me and my son are like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I had to literally like just like change my mindset and be like, man, I'm a father now. I'm a husband.
And the thing is too, and I was just talking about this to someone recently, is like, bro, we're as adults, as parents, as men of God, we're learning, right? I'm learning to be a father. And if you grew up in the system and you grew up in that environment, you didn't have a godly example that's showing you, hey, this is how you raise your child, this is how you treat your wife, right? You're learning those things as you go along. So I thought about this the other day and I was getting deep and thought about it. I'm like, I'm here trying to raise a child while I'm here trying to learn at the same time. And that's sometimes that becomes a heavy burden because I got things that I'm going through that I'm trying to understand for myself. But
Yeah.
I got a responsibility to these 4 kids to raise
right.
them at the same time.
That's
So
right.
and that's why you can't do it without God, bro.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just can't.
Literally you need God, man. You need God in the center of all of everything that we're going through. Because in ourselves, you know what I mean, we just can't do it.
It's not enough willpower, not enough strength. I know I'm gonna fail on my own, man. And I know
Yeah.
what the end result's gonna be if I try to do anything on my own. And that's one of my favorite scriptures, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord
Lord.
with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your crooked path straight. And I love that one for the sole fact that, you know, we're human. I always want to figure everything out. I always want to lean on my own understanding. As soon as something happens, I want all the answers so I can figure everything. And that's not what God wants. That's
Yeah.
not what he asked for, right?
Yeah. And God is so loving and so kind and so righteous, you know. He'll let us do our will and we'll learn, you know, from it or we'll fall in it. And God will be like, are you done? You know, are you done playing? You know, can you listen to my voice and my guidance? Can you trust me now?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because God's not one to twist our arms and make us do things, you know? That's what's so crazy about free will is that, you know, we have this grace to walk in, you know, and it's like God gives us so much space. You know, I used to have this saying with my kids, like, I won't give you enough rope for you to hang yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's up to you what you do with it. And I feel like I know God's totally, I mean, his mindset is totally different than mine, you know what I'm saying? But I believe God lets us go through things in order for us to learn from them and mature and even our testings and our struggles, you know, we're supposed to learn from all of them things, you know?
Well, you think about this, you know, a pancake, right? There's no such thing as a one-sided pancake. Think about that. Like, try to picture a pancake with one side. It was like mind-boggling me earlier. There has to be 2 sides to every story. If there's good, there's evil. If there's right, there's wrong. If there's left, there's right. If there's up, there's down, right? And so as I'm getting older, I understand that I need that pain. I need, like, what do you learn when everything's going your way, when everything's lining up? You got the good job, you got the house, you got the money. During those times is when I'm like, I'm happy. All right, I don't need God. I forget about God for a minute. And I'm a Christian, like straight up. When things are going well, I'm like cruising. I'm in cruise control. God, you know what? I might slip up on some prayers here and there, read my Bible because everything's going my way. It's during the trials that I've learned my most valuable lessons. And pain has a way of moving your spirit that happiness, contentment, peace cannot, bro. You have to have stuff. Look how much suffering Jesus endured. Think about that for a second. Persecution, beating, spit on him. He suffered the most wicked death, but he said we're going to suffer and we need suffering. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning to appreciate the struggle. I really am, man, because all the things that I went through in my life, as I look back at them, they were tragic in the moment that I was going through. But as I look back now, I see the person that it helped me become. And I couldn't get to where I'm at today. I always say, man, I wish I would have went to school instead of going to prison. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't have the mindset I have. I wouldn't be the man I am today if I didn't go through those trials and those things that I went through, right? But we always have that in the back. I wish I would have did this. I wish I would. You live in regret, right?
Yeah.
And that's not how God wants it. Like, it reminds me of a 1,000-piece puzzle, right? Like, you dump it out at first and you don't know what's going on, right? And little by little, you start putting all the pieces together. And that's what God does with every single circumstance in our life, bro. Little by little. And by the end of it, with good, bad, ugly, whatever it is, he takes every single little piece and makes a masterpiece out of it, right?
It's just like that, that cloth, and they, when they do that stitching and stuff, and it has a picture on it. But if you look at the backside of that picture, it's all going all kinds of different twists and turns, But at the end of it, when they flip it over, and you're like, oh wow, look how it looks on this side, you know what I mean? And it's a trip though, because like you're saying, just yesterday I was preaching at a church, and I was talking about the story of Job and what Job went through, and I was like, the Bible identifies Job as a righteous, God-fearing man, and yet he went through devastation. The worst of the worst.
Losing your entire family, bro.
And then you start suffering physically, you know what I mean? And then you have these friends that just come in your ear. And that's, I love the book of Job, though, because it's so relevant for today. There's always going to be them people on the sidelines that are just going to be like, man, it's all bad for you. Just curse God and die, man. Why suffer? Why go through what you're going through? You know what I'm saying? And the scripture that I was really leaning on is when God finally speaks up after everything. And he says, were you there when I set the foundations of the earth, and that in itself is God just really, really just putting his sovereignty out there. And it's like, God is God, you know what I mean? And the more we read his word, we understand that his ways are perfect. And I mean, they're orchestrated and planned for our lives,
Amen. And I heard this message today, and he was talking about like trusting God's timing, right? Because I'm a critical thinker, man. I'm always thinking, right? Like, I can't sleep at night because my mind just racing. And I was thinking about it, like, and the guy's talking about waiting on God's time, and you don't need to know everything, right? And I started to think about it. I'm like, imagine if you knew the day you were going to die. Imagine if you knew the day your child was going to pass away, or your wife was going to pass away, or a natural disaster. Do you know how much fear you would be in, right? So why do we not trust God in every aspect of our lives? Even though we don't know what's coming, we know who's in charge, right? But our human nature wants to know every step of the way. I don't want to know when I'm going to die, bro. I don't want nothing to do with any of those disasters that may be coming. And so that resonated with me, because I was like, you know what, Lord, I don't need to know it all. You know what I mean? Because today I was driving and I was stressing about some things, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure everything out. And I'm like, I don't need to know. And I heard that message, bro, and it hit right on time. It was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And the pastor hit the nail on the head with that message, man.
See, one of my favorite scriptures when I get to that place is Romans 8:28, when it talks about that all things work together for good. And I came to my senses that, you know what, even when things ain't going good, you know what, God is still good and his plan is still perfect. And you know what, this is just a learning, there's something for me to learn from this. There's something that's challenging me. There's something in this that God has ordained for me.
Yeah.
And I got to look at the goodness in it, even when it's bad. I got to look at what's the good in this.
You got to take both sides of that pancake, bro. You can't just have one side.
Yeah.
Charles Stanley, you listen to Charles Stanley? He preaches the perfect message on it. And he says, are you going to be a student or a victim, right? And he's like, most people, and this really hit me because I'm this guy, right? He said, most people, when they get into a trial, they ask God to get me out of this trial, remove this from me, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you need this trial because God's trying to teach you something. So are you being a victim today, which I was, and I always am? God, get me out of this. What did I do? Why are you doing this to me, right? Instead of saying, God, what do you want me to learn from this? Because he's allowing it to happen for a purpose, right? A lot of times it's not punishment. He's trying to teach you. He's trying to grow you. That's what the Bible says. That's how we grow. And so when he said that, I'm like, that stuck with me for the past, 5 or 6 years when I heard that message so clearly, man. Because I'm like, wow, dude, that's the first thing I do when I'm in a trial. God, get me out of this. You know what I mean? I don't want to feel this right now, but when you understand you need it, it puts you in a whole different mindset, right?
Man, yeah, it does.
So how long have you been out now?
I've been out since 2003. Yeah. Man. I originally got busted in 1989. I was found guilty.
It's the year I was born, man.
1989. Yeah, what a trip. January 19th. It was 7 days after my 16th birthday. I was involved with the gang-related shooting. I would eventually be tried as an adult. and 89, 99, 89, 90, 91. Almost 2.5 years later, I was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 45 years to life. What's crazy though, just from 89 to that 91, I ended up getting out a year later from when I was arrested. During that time, when I got out, I went right back to the neighborhood. But this time I got with one of my homegirls. I ended up getting her pregnant. I ended up marrying her. Her mom and dad had to sign for us to get married because we were underage, right?
No way.
Yeah. What's so sad about it though is that it was only a few months after we had got married when she found out she was pregnant that they rearrested me for the crime of 89.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a raw deal for my wife, man. I was
So
like,
they let you off. They said you're good to go, or you were just fighting the trial.
no, they kept me. I had no bail. When they rearrested me, it was
No,
crazy.
before like while you were out, was so that charge it got dropped and then they let you out for a
Well,
little bit,
it.
or was
I
under
thought I
investigation?
thought I had beat it and everything. What happened is I had a DA reject.
Oh
I
no.
don't know if you're familiar with DA rejects, but DA rejects mean that they just didn't have enough evidence to go from municipal court to superior court and proceed with the trial. So what happened with me during 1989, the courts were not allowed to bond you over to superior court from municipal court without a physical witness, right? So what happens is they end up my main witness against me was my own crime partner. I mean, it was one of my good friends. He ended up turning state evidence against me. But the day that he was required to come to my pretrial, he didn't come. So when he didn't come, they didn't have enough evidence to continue with the case, so they dropped it. They like let me go. I mean, they were like
Yeah, that's what I was
the judge was like, hey, telling the DA, where's your witnesses at? Like,
Yeah.
we don't have enough evidence to send them to the next stage of this. So they released me.
That's crazy. So you went and got married because you thought everything was good to go, and your wife.
and you know what's a trip, Daniel, man? When I got out, bro, I was like, you know what? That was a close call. I already knew I was looking at life, and I changed some of my patterns. I wasn't holding a gun no more prior to this. I always had guns on me. I was out there in the neighborhood just representing. I like to think that my wife, really, really slowed me down. My girlfriend at the time, me and her, we started spending a lot of time together. Even though she was a homegirl too, though.
Yeah.
She was straight gangbanging too. And when we first got together, there was always like 20 homies, 20 homegirls. So we were always together as groups. It was just one big old group, always hanging out in the neighborhood. But little by little, we started like really dating, like going to the movies or just hanging out. Or I'll go to her house. Homies like, where you going, fool? I'm like, I'm gonna go over to my girl's house. They were like, what? You're not gonna kick back in the neighborhood, fool? Go get her, bring her back. I was like, nah, we're gonna kick back over there, And little at a time, we just started, getting more intimate and stuff. To eventually, I mean, can't get more intimate than getting her pregnant,
Yeah.
And her family is real old school Mexican tradition. And they were like, yeah, you're pregnant. You got to get married. You got to make this right, And my mom and dad, they were cool with it. They were like, do what you got to do. So we ended up having a big old wedding in Las Vegas. When I say big wedding, I just mean a gang of my homeboys went. I mean, there was probably like, I don't know, maybe like 40 homies in Vegas.
Where'd you guys get married at in Vegas?
It was called the...
The Little White Chapel or something, like one of the famous ones.
It sounds like it. I don't know if it was Little White Chapel. It was in Circus though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was called something Chapel. I forgot, like Light Chapel or something.
We got married at the Venetian Hotel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Las Vegas. Yeah.
Yeah, we got married there, a bunch of homies, and it's crazy because the following week when we went back to the neighborhood, we had a big gathering, like a reception party now, right? And it got shot up. All my homeboys were there. No. Everybody was drunk. It was just like, man, this is the way my marriage is getting started, right? Oh, no. Yeah, it was crazy, man. And but during this time from when I first got out and getting with my girl and everything, I had told my mom, I'm gonna start working, Mom. I'm gonna get a legit job. I ain't gonna sell dope no more, man. And I was doing it, man. God's my witness. I was doing it. I was doing righteous stuff. I was trying to change the way I dress. I wasn't hanging out with the homies as much, you know. I lived in my neighborhood, so I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid everything. But my mindset was like, man, I got this baby coming. I need to save up money. Me and this girl, I mean, I was 17, she was 16, few months off. And we were already talking about getting our own apartment. You know, we were talking about like saving up for this baby. I still had some dope money that I was putting in the pot, you know, like save up this money too, you know what I mean? But I ain't, you know, selling dope no more. And I even left my city, my neighborhood where I grew up at, gang banging, and I went like 2 cities over to my sister's house just to kind of be low profile. My sister was like, "Yeah, come and take this room, you and your wife, and you guys can stay here until you get your place." Because everybody kind of knew my plans. You know, we're gonna get an apartment, but you know, I didn't have the money and everything like that. We were just kids, you know what I mean? When I think about it, who's going to give a 17-year-old an apartment? What kind of 17-year-old gets an apartment? You know what I mean? When I think about our plans back then, I'm like, that's crazy. But being 17, we're already thinking like, at 18, we're adults, we're legal now, we'll be able to move on our own, you know? I mean, growing up, you hear like, well, when you're 18, you're out of here, you know?
Yeah.
So we're already like, okay, 18 is going to be coming up soon. Let's save up our money, get our apartment, and have this baby and live our lives, right? Unfortunately, though, it was 4th of July, like the weekend before or whatever. It wasn't 4th of July, the actual date, but it was like that weekend. I don't remember. It was after 4th of July. I don't remember the exact date, but it's either before 4th of July or after 4th of July. I don't really remember. But I remember going to 7-Eleven by my house with my brother. He wasn't my blood brother. He was a homie, but I would say he's my brother. We went over there. We got like some Gatorade, I think, and a bag of chips, and we're walking out, summertime, and the cops pull up, the sheriffs, LA County sheriffs pull up on us, and we figured we're legit, you know what I mean? I ain't doing nothing recently or anything like that, so we didn't try to run from the cops or nothing. Right away, they put the light on us, tell us put our hands on the hood and all that good stuff, asking us for ID, run our names and everything. They sat us down on the curb. And there was one guy that was talking to us, asking us information and stuff, you know. And then the other one went to run our names. And when the guy that was running his names, when he came back, he pulled out his gun right on me and told me not to move, that I'm arrested for 187, you know. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, don't move, stay where you're at. And he comes and gaffles me up, and I'm in the tank, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, I got my phone call, and I called my wife. I told her, I said, babes, you know what I mean? And she already knew, though, because they let my brother go. They let him go. So he went and told them they arrested him, you know? So I called my wife, and by this time, though, I already knew, though. When they told me what I was being booked for, I knew, was it at this time? Yeah. No. I didn't know at first. When I first called, I was like, yeah, I don't know what they got me for, whatever they're saying for a murder case or whatever, but I don't know what it, you know, they're tripping, you know? And it was something that I wasn't all shooken up about, though, because in my neighborhood, they would do that a lot. The cops would arrest a lot of us and just try to get information off something that happened, you know, just hoping that somebody would say something about something that happened, right? So I'm already thinking, they're probably just fishing, man. It ain't nothing towards me. They're just trying to get information, you know? But later on, because they arrested me like at 7 o'clock in the evening, probably like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm crashed out in the cell. I'm right there, like crashed. And they come wake me up. They're like, get up. Come on, you're gonna go be interviewed. And I was like, man, where am I going? They were like, they're going to interview you. I said, who's going to interview me? They told me the gang unit's here. So when I go into the holding tank, these gang officers, they come in, and I knew them. You know what I mean? I already knew them. They knew me. And they were like, hey, what's up, Jojo? Like, try to shake my hand. How you doing, man? Congratulations. Heard you got married. You're working. You're doing good. I said, man, you know all this. So why are you sweating me for? Why are you messing with me?
Yeah.
And they told me right there and then, it ain't on us. This ain't on us. And I was like, what do you mean it ain't on you? You guys are the ones that arrested me. They're like, no, you had a warrant for your arrest for what happened in 89. And I was like, in 89? What are you talking about? He said, what you got busted for already? You're being re-arrested for that case.
Ooh, no.
I said, for that one case, I said I beat that case, and then that's when they started telling, no, you had a DA reject. Now the DA supposedly has new information on you.
Oh no.
So they're telling us, like they're telling me, well, everything went good the last time, so it'll be good for you. Just kick back, relax. Everything's gonna be all right. And I'm telling them, man, don't try to be my friend. You guys. Sure enough, when I go to court, they show up to testify against me and stuff.
No.
Same exact gang unit. So yeah, I ended up finding myself. So at this time, Daniel, my wife, I believe, let's see, she was like 5 months pregnant at this time. So my attorney that I had in the last case, he told me if we have a speeding trial, they got to get you in trial. We have to have a jury, everything within 90 days. That's your civil right to have a speeding trial. So we could do that. If we do that, you could be home before this baby's born. So I was like 5 months. He's saying, I said, I might beat it right on time. You know what I mean? So you figure she's 5 months pregnant, 3 months, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months pregnancy. I said, man, I might make it home that last month before he's born, right? I already knew he was going to be a boy. So here I am. I'm like, let's do the speeding trial. Let's do it. You know what I mean? So right away, we start putting our motion discovery. Right away, we get a jury. And I'm going through trial, Daniel, and everything's looking good because all the witnesses from 1989, they couldn't identify it. Every single one of them was like, nah, that's not him. That's not him. That's not. There was probably like 8 different witnesses that all came. The key witness was my crime partner, though, the one that didn't show up the last time. So I'm thinking, okay, everything's going according to plan. Everything's happening exactly like it happened last time, right? So when they call my crime partner, right, I'm like, yeah, he ain't going to show up. Like, this dude, man, this dude loved me. I don't know why he even threw my name in the mix in the first place, but this dude loves me. He ain't going to come, man. I know he's not going to come. So he ends up coming in with the officer. He's the last witness. He comes in, and I'm still looking at it like he ain't gonna say nothing. He ain't gonna say nothing. And he comes in walking with the gang unit. LA County sheriffs, they wear these green jackets that say sheriffs on them, right? And I see like 6 of these green jackets coming in, and he's walking in the middle, and he's mad dogging me. He's looking at me like I did something wrong, He's looking at me like all hardcore, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, what's going on here? He gets up on the stand. He ends up saying everything that happened that day, which I was guilty. He started adding other stuff that I hadn't even been charged with, the other crimes that we had did. And he just starts giving more and more information. So they're going to end up rebooking me on new charges. It was all bad, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, my lawyer's, trying to convince me, you know what though? He's doing this in his best interest. We're going to twist him up right now, He's doing all of this just to get himself out of this trouble. So we're going to roast him right now, We're going to have our opportunity, This is the district attorney presenting his evidence, but we go next. We'll be able to chop him up, So I'm like, okay, all right. Like, I got a paid lawyer. Like, come on, do your thing, This is why you get the big bucks. Let's do it. So he goes and he does what he does, and he's like, cross-examining him, and it looks like he's, really, really tainting his character and everything. So I'm thinking like it's all in the jury's hands, right? It was like a day later that the jury came back and found me guilty on all charges. I had probably 10 different charges, from intimidating witnesses. I had first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murders. I had robberies. I had all kinds of stuff that ended up just coming back, and they found me guilty on all charges, right? And it's crazy because the day that the jury came back with the guilty verdict, the day that my son was born. Like, I didn't make it out for his delivery. The day they found me guilty is the day my son was born.
How old is your son now?
My son now is 33. September will be 33. He's 32 right now.
Dang, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you ended up doing how much time on that one?
Like almost 14. So by the grace of God, I ended up going back to court on appeals a couple of times, a few years later, and they ended up, during my trial, they ended up messing up on some of their procedures, which, ended up being favorable for me. Mm-hmm. I believe, them favors came down as a direct, favor from God, because God, I had given my life to the Lord a little bit after all of that. And I ended up back in court being resentenced, but I still had the life term. But I went from 45 to life to 25 to life to eventually 5 to life. So I got a lot dropped down. I would still end up eventually doing, all on it, 14 years, 14 years of that, and then 5 years of parole. They kept me on parole for 5 years on high control because I was one of the first lifers to get out. I was actually the first lifer to parole from New Corcoran.
It's crazy.
2003, when lifers weren't coming home. 2003, it was like you never heard of anybody coming home on a life term. Never.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
While you were in there, that's where you got saved?
I got saved, man. And it's crazy because when I got saved, I wasn't looking for God. I felt like I was climbing the political ladder, and I was, doing very, very, I was doing very well for myself, as far as the game goes. Because listen, remember I told you before I got busted again, I was doing good. I was away from the neighborhood. I wasn't carrying no guns. I wasn't selling dope no more. I had changed the way I looked. Like when I say the way I looked, I kind of like left the
Straight
gang
up.
of Pearl,
Yeah.
to kind of to the side. I wasn't all dressed, all hardcore, trying to mad dog nobody. I had some button up shirts or whatever, trying to just change a little bit of my image. But when I got found guilty, I shaved my head. I put back on that mean mask, and I was like, let's do this,
Yeah.
And I didn't care. I figured, hey, I'm young. By this time, I was 18 years old. Remember, I got busted when I was 16. By the time I was found guilty, I was already 18. I turned 18 in the county jail. And I was like, I'm young with all day. I was raising my hand for everything.
Yep.
And right after stabbing some dude, man, I found myself in the hole. I was in the hole. And I found a Bible track in between the bunk. It was just all crumbled up in between the bunk. And I remember opening and reading it, and it was this old evangelist, Vincent Peale. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I think his first name was Vincent, his last name was Peale, like P-E-L-E or something like that. And I remember opening that track, and it was talking about God's love. And I got so mad when I read that Bible, when I read that little track. I crumbled it, but I didn't throw it in the toilet. I just threw it in the corner. And later on in that day, I found myself going back and reading it again. And then I crumbled it again and threw it. And then I found myself going back to it again. And later on in that night, I remember, like, I thought I was having a mental breakdown because I just started cussing out God. I was blaming God for all the wrong in my life, for the death of my 4-year-old nephew that just took me on a whole nother rampage. And a lot of the abuse that I suffered, at the hands of my father, being physical abusive. And I just blamed God for everything that night, man. Everything I was blaming God for. And I remember, like, I don't know about you, but when I get angry, I'll start to tear up. Like, that's how angry I was,
Yeah.
where I was just tearing up. I wasn't crying like a baby, but tearing up, and I was just mad. I started punching the walls and everything. I had a bunkie, so I wasn't worried about, none of that stuff. I was just punching the walls, and I was cussing out God, and I went to sleep like that. When I woke up the next day, I couldn't even open my eyes. My eyes were so heavy from crying and everything, so puffy. And I was putting water in my eyes. And I couldn't open my eyes. I was like, man, what the heck's going on with me, man? Like, what? And I don't know what it was, bro, but I ended up falling on my knees and I asked God to forgive me. And I remember that prayer, Daniel, was something so simple of just asking God, like, God, if you're real, I need you to change this heart. Like, I don't want to hurt nobody no more. I don't want to kill nobody. I don't want to go this route. Like, help me, Lord, And that's all it was. And I didn't hear God talk back. Virgin Mary didn't show up, no angels. It was nothing spiritual took place. But something in my heart felt like just to get that off my chest, felt like a weight was lifted. It felt like I don't know. It felt like I could breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And you know what? From that day forward, I started to see God working things out in my life without it really being God, but in the back of my mind, and today I would say, like, in my spirit, I felt God like orchestrating some changes that were about to happen in my life, because I ended up staying in that hole for, I think it was like 128 days or something like that. When I went to sergeant's court for stabbing that guy, they were waiting on a DA referral, but ain't no DA going to pick up an extra little jailhouse stabbing when somebody already has life. You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to do it. They're not going to waste their time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they keep me in there. That's part of my punishment for like 128 days. Once they do their investigation and realize that it wasn't a political move, whether I be sent to high power again or go back to mainline, right? So they ended up realizing, because the whole time I was saying it was personal. It was just personal, you know, like it was all personal. And so they ended up sending me back to the mainline. And when I go back to the mainline is when God really, really started to just minister to my heart. When I went back, I remember as soon as I got back to the dorm, I was in a part of LA County Jail, which is called Medium North. And when I got there, it's in Wayside. And when I got there, homies came to me. It was a dorm setting. They came to me and they were like hugging me, giving me high fives and whatnot, shaking my hand, telling me, you know, you did good, homie. You know, the homies appreciate it. They got a little care package for you, blah, blah, blah. And then they hand me an ice pick and tell me who my next victim is, you know, that quick. I'm like, I didn't even get to shower, nothing. They're already identifying my next victim. And in my heart, I was like, all right, you know, on the outside, I'm saying, all right, who is it? You know what I mean? Blah, 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 you know? And in my heart, I'm like, man, God, you know, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I asked you to, you know, to get rid of in my life. You know, like, I don't want to hurt people no more. And I remember the homies telling me, I told them, hey, I'm going to take a shower real quick. And they said, hey, take a homie with you. Because at that time, I think there was some tensions between us and the blacks, the Mexicans and the blacks. And they told me to take a homie with me to the shower, like just have that homie stand on the outside while you take a shower. So while I was in the shower in Medium North, the showers only come up like chest high. There's a like a cedar block wall, and then there's a window right there, like head view, like from your head to your chest. You could see out, right? You could see out into the dorm from the shower. So here I am showering and stuff, and I look at the door and I see a bunch of sheriffs coming in. And they're removing the guy that I'm supposed to hit next. And I'm like, Lord, like, is this you, God? Like, what the heck? Like, what's going on here? But that guy goes. And after I get out of the shower, the homies come and say, yeah, that dude, you know what I mean? Like somebody must have told the cops or something, you know, that he was going to be hit or something, you know? And I was like, all right, whatever, you know? So I felt like a burden released from me. And it was funny though, the way God like worked out this next situation, because right after that happened, my bunk was right in the middle of like where all the blacks were, right? Where they were, you know, housed. And the homies came and told me, they were like, hey, don't trip, you know, just watch your back tonight. Tomorrow we're going to move you over here to this side, you know. When the other officer comes in, he'll move you, right? But for tonight, you got to like kick it right here. Just watch your back. I'm like, all right, I ain't tripping. It's cool. They said, yeah, but tomorrow, though, when you move over here, though, we're putting you with the homie, but he's a Christian. And I was like, a Christian? They're like, yeah, he's cool, though. He's cool. Like, he does his own thing. Like, he minds his own business. You'll be all right there. So I was like, all right, cool. So when they moved me over there, and remember, I'm crying out to God, like, man, God, I want something different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I go to this guy, this Christian dude, you know, he wasn't like your typical homie. This dude was a big boy. He was a YA baby too, right? And his name was Gabriel. And what happens is Gabriel introduces himself. He just be like, how you doing? My name's Gabriel. And so I said, what's up? You know, I told him my nickname and stuff and where I was from. And he was like, okay, still nice to meet you, right? So he takes off. He goes, does his Bible study. They have a little worship corner over there where they're praising God and sharing testimonies and stuff. And I'm over here still gambling, doing what I'm doing. And one day this all takes place. This little part of my story takes place like in 2 weeks. So when I get there, meet Gabriel. A couple of days later, I want to say, I make a phone call to my wife because I hadn't talked to her since I was in the hole all that time, right? So I call home and I tell my wife, I call and she right away she's crying and she's telling me that one of my good friends, one of my good homies had been murdered. And I was like, man. And I got upset and I started banging the phone. Bam, 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 banging the phone. Homies come and get me there. What's wrong, fool? Like, kick back. I'm like, man, get off me. And I end up just hanging up. I end up hanging up on my wife. And I go to my bunk and I'm right there. And everybody's seeing what happened. You know, I made it like a little scene. So my bunkie, Gabriel, comes back and I'm on the top bunk. Gabriel's on the bottom bunk, right? He comes to the bed, though. He wasn't there when I got there. And I jump up on my bed. And Gabriel comes over and he looks at me. He said, the only one that's going to get rid of that rage in your life is the Lord Jesus Christ. And I jump off my bunk and I'm like, fool, you don't know me, man. What are you talking about, you know? And Gabriel was big, bro. I wasn't big at that time. At that time, at this time, I'm probably weighing 100 pounds soaking wet, you know? Gabriel's probably about 220, big dude, has probably like size 18 arm, big dude. But I'm thinking like, oh, he's a Christian though. You know, if I get down with this dude, all my homies are going to jump in, right? Because I'm still like an active Southsider.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's just a Christian. You know what I mean? They ain't going to back up this dude, you know? Even though he's an ex-homie, in my head, I'm thinking like, nah, homie's got my back, right? So I'm like going off on him like, fool, you don't know who I am, man. You know, this and that. He said, I might not know who you are, but I know that rage in your heart. You know, that same rage was in my life. And he starts telling me this stuff. And we just start talking, man. And, you know, at first we're arguing. We're like, you know, I'm kind of like defending my pride. Like, who, you know, don't come and try to check me. You know, who are you, you know? And he just starts talking to me. And, you know, I kind of let my guard down a little bit. And he starts ministering to me. And hours go by, bro. Hours go by where the lights already turn off. And he asked me this question. He said, if you were to die tonight, do you know where you spend eternity? And I looked at him and I started thinking about that little thing I used to wear. I'm like, man, I believe I'm going to heaven. You know what I mean? I believe in God. And he asked me, have I been born again? I told him, no. He said, then you ain't going to heaven. You know, he was very blunt with me and told me, you're not going to heaven. He said, I hate to tell you that. And he showed me in the scriptures that even in James, you know, he shows me that even the demons believe and tremble. And I was like, man, I ain't no demon though. You know, I believe in God. And he was like, no, you must be born again. And here I am like Nicodemus, man. What do you mean born again? You know, what are you talking about? Remember, I only went to that one Christian church one time and I don't remember any other Christian really ministering to me. I mean, Victory Outreach was a big part of my neighborhood back then, you know? But I didn't remember the whole salvation thing, you know what I mean? Confess with your mouth, believe with your heart, you know, none of that stuff. And here he is telling me that if I believe in my heart and I confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord, then I will be saved. Like you could go to sleep in peace knowing that if you die, you're going to go to heaven. And I was just like tripping off of him. And he said, haven't you ever heard the Easter story about Jesus dying for your sins and everything? And I was like, yeah, I've heard it, you know. He said, do you believe it? And I told him, I think I believe it. You know what I mean? I said, I don't got no proof that he did it, but I think I believe it. And he said, okay, say this prayer with me. And I said the prayer with him. And once again, you know, I didn't see no bright lights. Heaven didn't open up. I didn't hear God, you know, clapping or anything. And, but I felt something once again. I felt like another piece of my burden was being lifted. And I remember that day, Daniel, I laid in my bed and I took off my shoes for the first time in a long time. And because we used to sleep with our shoes on because we were in a dorm setting. A lot of times riots would jump off in the middle of the morning. So I was one of them young. They used to call us like Ninja Turtles because we would put these masks over our heads and would go assault people and stuff. And I took off my shoes, man. I took off my shoes and I laid there and I fell asleep. And I remember waking up early. I think it was even before pill call, because I think the inmates that would get medicine early in the morning, they would turn on the lights, give them medicine, and then they would turn off the lights again and like let you sleep a little while before chow time, right? And I think I was awake even before then, and I was sitting on my bed and I was just looking around and I'm looking at the blacks and I'm looking at everybody and I'm like there was something different the way I was looking at mankind. Remember I told you that my heart from seeing all the evil growing up, that my heart, it kind of like, it just like, I didn't see humans as important people, you know, of any value. I just seen them as next victims or whatnot. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't value human life.
Yeah.
And at this point in my life, though, I started to realize these are God's people right here. Like God loves these people. And here I am trying to kill them. You know, here I am trying to hurt them. And something was starting to be birthed in me, man. And it's crazy because from that day forward, my life would never be the same. That was the birthing of my new journey, my new man. I believe I was born again on that day. And
How long ago was that?
this was back in 19 early, I want to say early 92.
So you finished your prison sentence and you walked with God the rest of the time.
The rest of the time, through youth authority, where, oh my goodness, we could go for hours just talking about my testimony and why and how it was challenged and how it was like it was really, really tested. Because if you know anything about California Youth Authority, it's just all about games. It's all about trying to break people's spirit. I'm talking about just anybody's spirit, not Christian, just any other gang member. I mean, from sex playing them to challenging them. I mean, there was a lot of people in there. I mean, YA is just evil, wild evil. I'm talking about like the spirit of death. I mean, there's always kids hanging themselves just because of the pressure in there.
It's crazy.
And here I am trying to walk that straight and narrow. And, what we were talking about when we weren't live, when we weren't on air, was that God had gave me a lot of favor when I came to the saving knowledge of Christ. And God gave me a lot of favor, within the institutions and allowed me to minister to a lot of people. But I was still tested, still challenged, still tempted, very much so, to go back to my old ways because people were challenging me. People were getting in my face, telling me I couldn't associate with my black brothers, and telling me I couldn't, do this. I couldn't even go to the Christian church because that was known as the black church.
Yeah, I don't miss the politics in there, the politicking, man, with
Yeah.
all that. How about so you got out, how has God used you now since you got out? What year did you get out?
2003.
What does life look like since you got out and you've been walking with God now, man?
It looks good. I say that much. It looks good. And you know what? Thank God for my beautiful wife, my teenage homegirl that I married when she was 16.
Still together, huh?
We're still together.
That's amazing, bro.
We have 4 beautiful children. The one that she was pregnant with is my oldest, who will be 33 this year. I have a 20-year-old. I have a 17-year-old, and I have a 14-year-old. And life is good, man. I'm the owner of 2 different businesses that God has blessed me with. Man, I'm a volunteer firefighter with LA Fire Department. I'm a community emergency response team member. So in emergencies, they call us out, man. So it's crazy. I do a lot of motivational speaking within the schools, within drug programs. Yeah, man, that's my thing, man. I go into prison. And trip off this. After hearing all of that, I'm committed to 1 year of going back into prison to teach inmates how to break the cycle of incarceration.
That's a blessing. Only God's capable of doing that, right?
Yeah,
Taking somebody
yeah.
who was once lost and then helping that person lead other lost people to Him, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how God can do that, because when you look at things that people have been through, sometimes when they're not walking with God, those things wreck the rest of their lives and they never come back, right? Some people never stay out of the prison system.
Yeah.
They don't come back from certain things. So to see God take you and use you now to be speaking to those individuals that you were sitting in their seats, that's powerful, man, to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I love it, bro. I love going back in there and giving them hope, because I always tell them, I ain't no different than you guys. You know what I mean? I've been down that path. I know what that path of hopelessness looks like. I was doing life in here.
Yeah.
Not expecting to ever go home,
So what's your message for someone, man, who just got out of prison, bro? Because I remember how hard it was to get out, and they're trying to find their way, man. What's the best advice you could give them if they're out there right now listening and they need some guidance?
My best advice is, don't be prideful. Don't be prideful. Ask for help, ask for, understanding. Because a lot of times we get out here and just want to try to figure things out on our own, and there's so many resources. There's so many people out here that, you'd be surprised how many people actually want to help us, And it's so much easier when we surrender and just ask for help and build a support network. And I always tell people, me being in recovery, working through the 12-step program, working through the TC program, the therapeutic community, I learned to really, really reach out to my mentors, reach out to sponsors, reach out to my pastors, my leaders within the church, and not it kind of goes back to the scripture you shared earlier, not leaning on my own understanding,
Mm-hmm.
because what I realized is that my greatest thinking is what kept putting me in the mix.
Oh yeah, that's
you
what
know my
got
best
me in the
thinking,
worst situations.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So I had to realize that. I learned something, going through treatment. I learned that, what, my first thoughts are usually wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't respond on my first thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think I've shared with you before, one of the greatest components of my recovery is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which, you know, um, it triggers me to think about my thoughts. And I know that sounds funny, but yes, it does. Like as soon as I get a thought, I start thinking about that thought. If I act on this thought, what's going to be the ripple effects,
Mm-hmm.
And way back then when we still had like VCRs, we used to have a saying of play the tape all the way through. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And it literally means like if you do this, like fast forward, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be the end result of this movie right here? Because you know yourself, and once you get engaged with something, you know where it's going to take you. So that usually causes me to change the channel within my head, like, literally, like, okay, I'm thinking crazy, let me change this.
Yeah.
And that's helped me, you know what I mean? And
That's
um
powerful because they don't teach you that stuff. You think about it, like think about it in school. Think about half the stuff that they teach us. They don't teach us like real life skills, bro. Like that's an important skill to have. Learning how to process your thoughts, learning how to process your emotions. Like that's something that will help someone for the rest of their life. Yet they don't
yeah,
teach it in school, right?
yeah.
They don't teach you anything about
Well,
behavior modification in
yeah,
school, right?
yeah, it's true. It's true. But yeah, today though, life is good, man. I always I count my blessings, bro. I literally count my blessings every day. I go to sleep and say my prayers. I thank God for, the things that were good and the things that weren't so good in my daily life,
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, every day isn't a good day, but it's a good day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like my
No.
my worst day out here can't compare to my best day in there.
No.
You know, waking up next to my wife, and I wake up early when my wife's asleep, all my kids are asleep, and I walk through before I head out to work, and I say a prayer over my family, and I just, I'll go to my refrigerator. And I even thank God for that refrigerator. I'll be like, man, Lord, I thank you that I could open up this refrigerator and I have choices today. I look at that egg, that raw egg, and I like, I could boil that egg, I could fry that egg, I could scramble that egg. Like, man, I could throw cheese on that egg.
Yeah.
I throw some hot sauce on there. And man, Lord, I got some pineapple juice, orange juice, I got cranberry. Like, man, I got options today. For you that never been in prison, that might not make no sense to you. But you know what? For me, it makes a lot of sense, and it brings me to that attitude of gratitude every single day that, I'm free, and every day I got to work to stay free. That's one of my positive affirmations, that I'm free, but I got to work for this freedom every single day.
That's right, because I understand that fully because those wicked thoughts, those wicked desires, your flesh, every single day your flesh tries to pull you away from your purpose in God, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a common misconception that people have when you come to Christ. Say, you're good, like
Yeah.
you're not good. You
Yeah.
have a target on your back now, and you're going to be
Yeah.
working twice as hard to be on the right path. Going against the grain is
Yeah.
hard. Going upstream is hard, right?
Yeah, it is.
God gives you the strength to do it, but it's like you said, it takes daily work to die to yourself and not give into all those wicked things that your heart and your flesh are trying to pull you away and pull
That's
you
right.
into, man. And that's a very important thing, the battle that we face every day, man. It doesn't go away, dude. And that was one thing I wasn't aware of that was gonna happen. And I'm glad nobody told me, because if someone would say, hey, you sign up for this, you're gonna be in a battle every day, I probably would have
Yeah.
said, nah, you know what, I think I'm good, man. I'm already
Yeah.
fighting for my life out here, you know what I mean? Battling
Yeah.
myself. Let's talk about your podcast, man. You got a podcast. It's a powerful podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast is called Trap Families. You know, Trap Families is my foundation. The actual podcast name is Trap No More. And my platform is surrounding the family members of the addict and the inmate. The whole goal is to bring these families on to give them a voice, because they're like a secret society, and it's crazy because when I think about it, is there's so many of them that they didn't sign up for any of this. You know what I mean? and yet there's so many of them that feel like they did something wrong. They feel like they're living in guilt. They're living in shame. They're like, there's so many of them. Even my wife herself, for years, um, like I would never go to none of the events or work functions and stuff because I was busted. But she would whenever everybody would ask, like, "Where's your husband at? Where's your husband?" Um, she would always say, "Oh, he had to work," and they never knew that I was busted. You know what I
Really?
mean? Yeah. So she lived this secret life. You know what I mean? And it's crazy, bro. It's crazy the way the family is infected. I was just doing a little statistic check yesterday, and it said that just here in California, there's 138,000 children, and I even think them numbers are even low. You know, what I mean, these wherever they got these numbers from, I think they're low. But 138,000 children are affected by a mother or father being incarcerated only here in California.
Yeah.
In county jails throughout the state of California, I believe it was 97,000, right? And overall affected children of incarceration, parole, probation, or DCFS supervision, it's 300 and I think it was 387,000 children just here in California. That's a lot of children that are affected, you
It's
know.
about 500,000 right there if you add all of them together.
Yeah.
That's a lot, man. That's a big population right there.
Yeah, and if it's not addressed, like we were talking earlier about this generational curse, man, it won't be long, and I mean, the numbers are even that much more staggering when you think about the kids that when you do what are they, them surveys of inmates? You go into these prisons and they do these surveys. How many of your fathers were incarcerated? I mean, the average is sick, bro. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no.
It's like high numbers.
Yeah.
These kids that are out here being affected, they're, what is it called? Predestined. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. No,
for prison
100%.
life, bro.
That's why, when I read that statistic that there's a 93% chance that the father, when he gives his life to Christ, that the family will follow, it really lit a fire in my soul, bro, because I'm like, you know what? Like, that's almost a 100% chance that if there's a godly man in that family, that the
Yeah.
family's going to follow. So what does that do when there's not that there? How high is that percentage, bro? Like,
Yeah.
it's got to be just as high, right?
Yeah.
And
I
so,
was, earlier when I was looking at you interacting with your kids, man, and I was just counting the blessings. Like you're like, you kind of looked at me like, don't let them stress you out, right? But I was like, man, I'm cherishing this moment, man,
yeah,
because my kids, which I just gave their ages, they grow so fast, bro.
yeah,
And it's crazy because, like I said, I have a 14-year-old son, and we're out here camping right now, and he's like out there, like he's so innocent, my son. And I was like, man, at that age right there, I was already locked up. I was already, caught up in, gang violence already, like out here in these streets. And I'm looking at him like we were talking about, man, when Jesus Christ came into my life, man, that curse was broken.
yeah,
You
done.
know what I mean? And I look at my daughters. I mean, I have two of them that are in college. My other son works in the emergency room in the hospital. And I'm like, I am blessed, man. And I'm looking at your kids and, just a little bit that I know about you, just talking to them about waking up early and having to go to church, you know what I mean? And they're excited about it. They're
Yeah.
showing me their shirts and showing me the water bottle they got. And it's like the godly man that been through what he's been through is now raising godly kids, man.
And that's powerful, man, because that hits home, man, because you know what? Like, I made a decision that I was going to be that man. And I've told you this story before on the podcast, man, but it hits different, bro. Like when you think about like one person has the power to affect future generations. Like I lose sight of that. Like, yo, you're gonna affect future generations the same way that curse continues, the same way the blessing is
Blessings.
gonna continue. Like, and I think about Abraham, bro. Like the God said he will bless many nations after him, and his kids. Like every seed of his was blessed because of the decision that he made, right?
That's right.
And that's what we're out here doing. That's why, like, I'm all in for fighting for men, bro. I want to help men. Like my passion is to help men find their purpose, walk in their purpose with God. Because guess the impact it's gonna have, bro, is like it's basically like generation after generation after generation, man. And I've always known that's why society's so broken, because you have one. God designed the family perfect. You need both halves. You need the man, you need the woman, right? And they walk in sync together to raise the family. So when one's missing, what do you think it's gonna be chaos, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be, and that's why I think like the past couple years, the people have been attacking men, bro. Like
Oh
you got
yeah.
men thinking they're women, right? And why
Yeah.
do they think that? Because they're being attacked, they're being programmed, right?
Yeah.
They know where to hit. Satan knows where to hit and when to hit when he's trying to
Mm-hmm.
achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's powerful
Yeah.
when you do the opposite and you
Yeah.
bring a man of God to be able to raise children and his wife, and you're leading your wife also,
Yeah.
right?
And that, and that's, kind of like your passion in dealing with these men is my passion dealing with these families, because I know the dynamics of a family staying together and being supportive of one
Yeah.
another is the more likelihood of, especially that one that's incarcerated or caught in addiction, because once a family gives up on them, you know what? I've been around these drug addicts and these convicts. Once a family like wipes their hands of them, you know what? They feel so much hopeless. Like there's no one else to go back to. I don't have nobody. Why should I change my life?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I do anything? I don't even have a family in my corner. They done kicked me to the curb. So, in my whole platform of Trap Families is I try to bring that family dynamics, even in their addiction and incarceration. And one of my main goals in coaching these family members is that, what? Families can recover.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way out of all this, of course, through Jesus Christ, right? And I just thank God, that He's given me that passion and desire, to really be there and stand in the gap with these families and really try to be an example and role model that, change can work.
And that goes back to Romans 8:28. Imagine when you're 15 or you're 16 and you're going through the trial you're going through, you don't see a good out of this situation, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and God has the ability to take what the devil meant for evil and make good out of it for his good, not for our good. He
Yeah.
uses it for his good, man. And that's why I love that scripture, because look at all the things you've been through in your life. And now he's using what seemed like chaos for you to be able to help families that are going through the same situation.
Yep.
And I'm sure you weren't thinking about that when you were going through. You weren't like, yeah, I'm going to be helping families one day. Like, no, man, that's the power that God has to change your heart, change your mind. He changes your motives. Everything about you gets changed, man. And that's what I want everyone who's listening on here to understand. Like, I don't care where you're at in your life, homeless, addicted, lost, hurting, stuck in a prison cell. Like, wherever you're at in your life, God has the power to take you as you are, meet you in that cell, meet you on the streets, doesn't matter where you're at, and change your entire life and give you new life and make you a new creation.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why I started this podcast. God asked me to start this podcast for that specific purpose, to let people know that there's hope. No matter what situation you're in, there's hope. God loves you. He has a plan and purpose for your life, and he wants to forgive you, man. Like, and I wish someone would have told me that some of those days when I was waking up on a park bench, bro, strung out, like looking for any type of hope I could get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having suicidal thoughts. Like, if I heard that one thing right there, man, it probably could have turned my entire life around, right?
Yeah.
Just hearing one scripture, one word from the Bible, bro.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, I think we had a good episode tonight, man.
I hope so, man.
That was a blessing. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. And if someone wants to book you for speaking, how can they get a hold of you, man?
They could look me up on all social media platforms under Trap Families. They could look up my name, Jojo Godinez, and search me out on YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of footage of me sharing my story and in broader details with that will link them to my podcast, link them to my social medias and all that. They could also find me through my email, which is jojogodinez03@gmail.com. And they can find me that way.
I'll put all this stuff in the description too, so you guys can check them out, link up with them. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on here tonight, man, sharing your story. It's a powerful testimony, man. I'm going to pray us out. Father God, I just thank you for today, Lord.